for designing, measuring, and evaluating the performance required for the codes and by the owners too. And lastly, product certification and building commissioning are essential to success to ensure that what has been designed is what has been built, and to determine that what has been built does indeed perform as intended and as designed. So with that, I'd like to thank you, and if you have any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them.
Excuse me, I have a question for you.
Okay.
It's rather challenging for me, myself. My name's Derek, I'm with Turner International. You mentioned about the World Trade Organization in the 6 principles. We're having multiple building code issues here with British standards and American standards. Some of them are, UL listed, some of them are ASTM guidelines, some of them are fire code, life safety, and there's a mix of these systems that we are adopting from consultants to contractors. How does ASTM and these organizations try to relate to one another in specifications being overlapped or scope gaps that are being done? How do you resolve that? How do you find out a key issue with it?
What you mentioned, the question was how do we deal with the fact that we have standards produced by different standards developing organization, and while the standards cover the same subject, they are not exactly the same, and therefore there is a discontinuity when one has specifications written around one particular standard and then another member of the project wishes to use other standards. There's no easy question to that. One aspect that ASTM has done is where this becomes an area of awareness. They have worked in the past with the other standards development organizations to try to harmonize those standards so that they do agree with each other. And in many cases, for example, with the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA, and also with UL, there have been cases where ASTM has dropped some of its standards in favor of the UL standards, and vice versa, where UL and NFPA have also, among the organizations, they agreed which of them would take the lead for that particular area of a standard itself. The situation becomes much more complicated in the international arena, and as I said, there are efforts to develop harmonization among the standards themselves, but in the meantime, it's very important that designers and builders and contractors remain aware of the fact that that currently there are differences between standards. Sometimes the differences may not be major, sometimes they may be more significant. And one needs to make sure that you are certifying products to the standards that are being required by the local regulatory agency. And that's a very short answer to a very complicated issue, I know. Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Dr. Shep, my name is Haytham Al-Khatib from Facade Engineering. My question is actually, when you talk about American standards, and we know there is also a Canadian standards. So are the American standards fit or comply to the environmental conditions of the GCC or UAE so that we can adopt them as per the testing and when they were actually issued to the environmental condition of the USA. So do we need to rewrite or reissue those standards to comply to the environmental conditions of the GCC or the Middle East? Thank you.
The standards for the conditions of the UAE, I assume that you're talking about the different climate conditions, and basically it's not so much a matter of reissue the standards as what needs to be done is that the standards that are appropriate for the UAE are the ones that need to be specified within that. Again, this goes back to the question of harmonization of standards that are used themselves, and also the most important thing is the decision of what's made with regards to the building codes what building code is going to be, what are the provisions of the building code itself, and what are the provisions of the overlapping green codes and energy codes that are used in conjunction with that. And in the development of the codes themselves, then the standards that are specified are the ones that need to be followed.
Hello, my name is Tariq Farhan from Jordan Green Building Council. You mentioned that the codes usually drive the industry, and at the same time, they might fall in a trap of being stagnant or being slow mover for change or coping with the market demand. On the other hand, the standards usually the main reference is the code or the standards, the official standards, but yet they're more responsive to the market and they always raise the bar. So especially in more mature markets, how do you see the relationship between the standards and the codes, specifically in the green buildings, and who would really be driving the market over the coming years?
I think the building codes will continue to be driving the market to a great extent because they will still define what standards have to be provided. I think the most important thing is in the building codes as well as in the standards themselves, for us to see an increasing percentage of performance-based requirements, so that it becomes defined as to how the products, how the particular elements or systems need to perform, and then it becomes incumbent upon the designer to work with the building materials manufacturers to be able to design systems that will provide that desired performance. Where the building codes become very constrictive, and in particular where they become they become a limiting case or an obstacle to moving into new areas such as sustainability and green building codes, is where they're highly prescriptive and there is no latitude for coming up with materials which may meet the same physical requirement for the function and at the same time offer perhaps benefits in other aspects of sustainability, which the original materials don't necessarily provide or exercise. But I think ultimately the codes will be the determinant. The standards development process will follow what's needed for the codes